So another thing I wanted to talk about is the situation in France and with the so-called terrorism in general. Now, I really want people to listen and try to answer and engage on this. I have various beliefs on this. First of all, let me make a geopolitical, realpolitik guess. This is not going to be like 9/11 for France, in that they're not going to wait a couple years and get themselves involved in a 10-year war in the Middle East. I believe the reason that the president, Hollande, or whatever it's pronounced in its French way, is, he's reacting immediately because he's probably going to bomb for a week or 2 weeks. 2 weeks would be a really long time, and I think they're pissed off enough to do that. But I suspect that they'll recognize various things, and the fact of the matter is that a huge population, not just of Muslims, but from areas over, I think, the last 70 years or a century or some crazy amount of time, means that it's the internal people. And we're not really, again, talking about a religious situation. This is a geopolitical or realpolitik situation where it's just like when we had conflict between Catholics and Protestants in Ireland. They might have thought it was about religion. They might have talked about it like it was about religion, but we really know it's about the history of Northern Ireland and Ireland in general, and being invaded, not entirely successfully in the long run, really, by the English, right? We know that's really what that was about. And the religion that a person has becomes a way to express a language in which they can talk. And if you notice about that, it's like with Christians. Some Christians are really lovely and nice people and will help you out when you're in a bind, even if you're a stranger, just and take pity. Whereas other ones just, are worried you might be a fag, and God hates fags. But what they have in common is this Christianity is a language. Both of those divergent opinions, they manage to put in a language that, and uses words like Jesus and stuff. All right. So it's just like that. It's like people use this as an excuse, but things are really geopolitical. Now, France, I think it's public, basically. It's too smart. Now, it's not that they're not militaristic. Those guys they love their Air Force. It's an aerospace nation. They'll take their Air Force and bomb the fuck out of Ivory Coast or whatever. And they do that all the time. They're very, like America, they're an arms seller, nation. And have advanced aerospace technologies. So it's not that. It's just that I think the French people are a little bit too smart to get in a 10-year war with some random other nation. It's like ISIS attacks them, so they bomb ISIS and then attack, Seychelles or something. But they might. They're not totally beyond that. But it's going to be way more limited than what we went through. I don't think that they're up for that. Now, another thing I want to talk about is just you guys need to let's just assume it's war. In which case, the enemy is weak. Okay, so they got 150, 250, because let's include all injuries, all casualties, not just the people that die. Say they got 250. Let's say it was 300 people affected by this. That's a significant attack, but in a war, it's also 300 people. If you lost 600, that would be twice as bad. In other words, you can judge materially how you're doing by, how you're doing, who's dying, who's affected. Okay, so for reference, France, over 3,000 people die a year in auto accidents. So obviously, auto accidents are, from a general's point of view, way more damaging than the terrorist attacks. So the point there is just, don't panic. For a war, right, this is a really bad crime, what they've done. This is a terrible, terrible crime. As a crime, it's just horrendous. It's definitely remarkable and one of the high level crime. But for war, not so much. For if it's a war, then we're ahead. We're ahead on the game. We're doing fine. They don't have much that they can do against us. Now, what do we do about it? Well, I'm a U.S. citizen, so let's separate this out. What do the French do about it? Well, that's up to the French. If they're really pissed and want to bomb, just like after Lockerbie, we went into Libya, bombed Libya, or it's always hard call, but what can I say? I'm an ape man enough to say, yeah, if you think you know who to bomb and you're honestly are doing that, then it's hard to say no. On the other hand, I would have to say the reason we have ISIS is not because of religion or anything like that. Religions are not really the cause. What happens is, what kind of situation does a psychopathic, schizophrenic person? Now, most schizophrenics are nice people. They're the victim of their own psychology and of the society around them, mostly. But in what situation do some of them that are violent, crazy, and motivated to push forward, when do those kinds of people become the leaders? Only in chaotic, in war-torn areas, in occupied areas. That's where, right? That's what creates a situation. Chaos is a situation where these warlord types rise up. They'll use whatever religion, they'll invent a religion, the whole gambit. You can see it all around the world, right? It's the chaos of war. And so if you bomb an area, make it short, because the longer it is, the more kids grow up in that kind of situation, and it's really damaging psychologically. And they can turn out fine on an individual basis, and people that had trouble can repair themselves on an individual basis. Statistically, you're creating chaotic psychology, which we have enough of in the Western world, and in rich places we have enough of it. War torn, it's like you're really generating this behavior that you are supposedly trying to attack. So you're gonna have to keep your revenge short and quick, right? Now, what happens after? Well, really, I think there's a problem of there's one way. There's only two nations we've ever rebuilt after a war in a way that worked, which is Japan and Germany. And that was, we took nations that had engineering companies that had actually helped in the war, for that matter, and we let them rebuild. Subaru, as I like to say, built aircraft for the Japanese war effort, and we all know Mercedes and these people did all kinds of Nazi stuff. We let them rebuild their company. That creates a vested interest. That has been proven to work. It might be too late now in Iraq. It wasn't too late way back in the second Iraq war. After that, if we, instead of Halliburton, we'd filled up with capital by getting contracts, local firms, so those local firms could rebuild, and the engineers left from what was a pretty good Iraqi engineering industry. If they could have been allowed to rebuild, it's probably not entirely too late, but I don't know what you're going to do in a place that's kind of wastelandy, engineering wise, like what is it, Eastern Syria, Western Iraq. Might be a little bit too late, but the principle still, stands. That's what you have to try to do. Now, if you find yourself in a situation like right now, where maybe that's not possible, maybe there is no local engineering firms to invest in, right? And forget whether it's good people or bad people. No, when you build up the infrastructure, better people, the kind of people that know how to build and maintain infrastructure, get empowered. You pull them into the organization, right? You're not empowering the organization as it is. You're going to change the organization. Anyway, when that's not possible, and to a certain degree, even when it is possible while it's happening, you get out of the situation, right? Now, right now, if there's nobody like that, um, or if there is, I believe, basically, I believe Bill Maher's position on this is get out of there, let Jordan and Iran and Saudi Arabia, and for that matter, Syria, who has had its shit together plenty over the last, 70 years of this bullshit that's been going on over there. They've kept themselves pretty stable till the Arab Spring. Maybe that's a little bit ambitious, but definitely Iran and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, they have vested interests. They have hundreds of thousands, millions altogether, a million, a million at least, but over there, well, I don't really know the whole size of it. Anyway, they have hundreds of thousands of forces, way more than the 30 or whatever it is that ISIS has. Okay, so those three forces, they're not exactly allies in every respect, which is good for us as an outsider in that checks and balances, right? They're checks and balances. So, and Egypt and other nations over there. As a matter of fact, it might even pull some nations together just to be a part of this coalition, because nobody really wants, even if you're Saddam and you're like, well, I like to let my sons rape people or whatever that they said, even if you're that on an individual level, no government over there wants or approves of ISIS, going and selling kids into slavery and all this crazy stuff, and some of that seems true. You always got to take it with the grain of salt, but these guys are fucking like like that video, heart eaters, a lot of them. I mean, they're just fucking nutcases. I feel sympathetic for the fact that they're nutcases, but I feel our responsibility is in providing a situation where nutcases look to everybody like, yeah, we need him as leader. We need the guy that'll lead a heart. Yeah, we're in a bad situation, but what are you going to do? I don't feel like eating it. So anyway, so that's my view on the Middle East and the French situation. Now, I think the French will play it a little bit smarter, but it's not that they're not a militaristic Western, modern Western nation, quite like America in a lot of respects in terms of their militaristic attitude. They are a little more savvy about, like, before we went into the first Iraq war, everybody in the U.S. was worried, oh, it's going to be like Vietnam, quagmire. And then we did it. It's like, hey, if you just bomb us, no problem. And then by the second Iraq war, we're like, might as well go in on the ground too. And it's like, we're good at forgetting. But maybe America could use that to its advantage. It's like we could forget some of our grudges and move on. Could work out in our favor. All right, bye. I'm not live in a minute. Second. Now.